So there's going to be, the plan is, and like, let's say, don't hold it against me if not everything happens, but as of now, there's a planned 5-disc set of Hunting High and Low with lots of new material. There's heavy vinyls of all the first 5 albums. And we're working on also a box set of vinyls called The Wonder Years for the first 5 albums. And then deluxe editions of Stay on These Roads, East of the Sun, and Memorial Beach. And a couple of other things that I can't tell you about right now, but that's going to be very good too, so just save your money.
Hi Harald, over here. Hi, Scotland again. My question to you, and I suppose with having Terry there as well, is as a fan, I feel what I've looked for from a-ha has evolved over the years. Do you find that your management style or management of Morten, of a-ha, has had to evolve as we've all grown together? Like, are there different demands placed on, you know, what people, record companies, fans, promoters are looking for from the bands? And has that differed, and if you had to adapt to these changes if they've happened?
Yeah, I guess Terry could answer that as well, from his point of view. But yes, it does change, and I just hope that I manage to change with it. You know, it looks, the whole world of music and entertainment is, it's constantly changing, as you know. And I was just actually thinking about it yesterday when I realized that, you go to a concert these days, for one thing, for example, is that everybody has a mobile phone. And I realized how used I've been to it. Nobody talks about that you're not allowed to record or take pictures or film anymore. That used to be prohibited. And I guess, in a way, technically still is, but nobody cared. And I think what you need to learn, of course, is to embrace it and think, that's great. I was yesterday at Centrum thinking, wow, it's really cool that all these people are sharing. And that you can experience everything. It's just very good for everyone. But 10 years ago, a lot of people disagreed with that. So I guess that's one example. And you have something to add? All right, okay. Next question.
Hi, I'm Eve. I'm from the US originally, but I live here in Oslo now, so I didn't come so far. But I'm just curious, maybe somebody's asked this before, but I'm just wondering why there was so little emphasis on the US, although I know when a-ha had their comeback, a lot of piano rock was really popular. For example, like Coldplay and Keane, forgive me for making those comparisons, but I think they could have really made a breakthrough again in the US, but there was just nothing. And we really tried hard to get them back, but it just didn't happen. What was the reason for that? Do you have any input?
Well, I guess maybe Terry should answer the first part of it. Okay. Just let me repeat the question.
That's difficult. Why didn't we do more? When a group first happens, in a-ha's case, it's worldwide. I experienced the same, not a problem, the same situation with Queen. When you become, when a-ha were #1 in all the countries that I mentioned about earlier, it's very, very difficult to keep promoting all these countries in the same day. So if you have enormous success in America and you wish to continue, especially in America, you've then got to discount touring in Norway, touring in Scandinavia, touring in the rest of Europe, touring in Japan, touring in Australasia. You have to give that up. So all the time, when a group has their first world hit, they've got to be everywhere, trying to balance it all the time. And sometimes you know, if you're there, you lose a bit here, and if you're there, you lose a bit there. It's very, very difficult. I remember with Queen in particular, who lost America entirely in their career, because they were big in every country too, and they were #1 in America, and then they were huge in Europe and huge in Australia. I remember sitting with Freddie Mercury, we were discussing, he said, the American market's falling. And I said, sure, because you can't be there to promote it. And they weren't there to promote it. But when, you know, other things got quieter in other countries, they rushed back to America and brought it back up again. So it's very, very difficult for groups to maintain. I'm not talking about one record. You know, one record, if it's a world hit, it's a world hit. And we all understand what that means. But if you're trying to sustain a career in the entire world and keep it at one level, it's almost impossible. Or it might be possible for a little while. After that, it just can't happen. Sorry, that's how I feel on that.
Hello, Heather from Salt Lake City again. You beat me to the punch. So on the tail of that question, does Morten have possibly any idea that, as far as management and whatnot, with these amazing albums that he's putting out post-AHA, that he may come to the United States to promote those, do concerts? As much as, I guess, some of us poor Americans would really love to see that, and we're kind of jealous of the European countries getting all these great shows. But again, Norway's been fantastic. It's my first time here, and we've loved everything, but hopefully maybe in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about it, and it's not, it's like Terry is saying, you know, you just have so much time. So, and naturally, since Morten is based in Norway, you know, sorry to say, but you know, Europe is going to be where we do most of our work. And, but we're not ruling it out, and I hope it's possible.
Is it on? Yeah. Hi Harald, it's PA here. Just a comment first, it's weird being a Norwegian. I've traveled for 30 minutes by train. I did not come from Connecticut or Utah. But it's great to be talking Norwegian to a Norwegian manager of a great band, the reason why we're all here. But to the question, both to Mr. Slater and Mr. Wiik, how involved have you been in not the creation of the music, but what actually ends up on the albums? I know that Mr. Slater was instrumental in getting Mr. Tarney on board after Mansfield had taken his shot. How involved have you been in selecting the producers for the albums?
Okay, sorry, I wasn't listening clearly because I thought your question was to Harald. Harald just explained. So you're talking about involvement of management in records. For me, in the early years, there was a lot of involvement because, as I mentioned earlier, I was blessed with good ears. So the guys, AHA, gave me the privilege of joining in with them in picking the singles. And I'm proud to say, yeah, for the first dozen singles or maybe more, I don't remember, I would be pretty strong about what I thought would be a hit and wasn't a hit, and the boys gave me the privilege of making that decision, and then I would, what are they going to say anyway? And then I would inform the record company and work with the record company, and that's the way we did it. That was for me.
Yeah, obviously, I've really only worked with, with one album because that was, the Foot of the Mountain album. I'd say I was pretty involved, but of course with AHA, they're three incredibly strong-minded people. So from time to time, I guess the role is more of a mediator. That you kind of get them to agree. It's not always very easy. So it's all going to be ultimately their decisions. But I'm pretty involved as well, and I'm pretty hands-on. But I think it's also important to know that it's a long process making an AHA album, at least these days. And So, you know, that could happen over the course of maybe 2 or 3 years, which has been, you know, for at least for the post-comeback albums. You know, the 80s albums were, you know, happened quicker. Like, for example, Hunting High and Low and Scarlet Days, I guess, was about a year apart. Something, you know that better than me, but something in the ballpark. Whereas, you know, there was 4 years from Analog came out until Foot to the Mountain. And there was work all that time. You know, there was demos being made, various rounds. Most of that is going to go on, you know, until all the 3 guys are fairly happy. They're not all going to be happy about everything because that's impossible. But you know, you got to find some common ground. And the process is flexible. You know, a lot of things happens, and maybe one guy comes up with a suggestion for a producer, and you try it out. And then maybe it doesn't feel right, but then that may be 3 or 4 months later, and then it goes on like this. I mean, there were a few producers involved in Foot to the Mountain, for example, that you've probably never heard of, and that you may. I mean, I don't know what's out there anymore as far as material. I keep seeing stuff that I thought nobody had, which is kind of funny as well. But you know, there's yeah, I guess on Foot to the Mountain alone, we had about 6 producers. So, but it happens over time as things evolve, and of course the record company has an opinion. But so it's not really like one decision. You know, it's a flexible, dynamic process that changes all the time. So you don't really. It's kind of hard, at least in the time that we have, to say, okay, how did we end up here? You know, it's. I think. First demos I heard, for example, for Foot to the Mountain was back in, I guess, in 2007. So, and some of those ended up on the record and some didn't. And I'm sure that on that album alone, we had at least maybe 10 demos for each song. And we had more than 10 songs. So I guess there's probably between 100 and 150 recordings from that album that you may not have heard. I hope that answers the question.
There's another aspect of people like Harald and I, how we make decisions towards the single or whatever, because there's an expression in the business amongst musicians when they're making albums and they've written a song and it's being produced, they become too close to it. And sometimes you get so close to it, the group, they lose perspective and they make a decision, and sometimes it's the right decision, but usually it's the wrong one, because they work so hard on the song, and they become so close to it, and they just really believe it's going to be a #1. And usually that's not always the case, so you need someone like Harald and myself. We're divorced from that intense record making, and we can stand back and we can digest it and we can feel and have an entirely different commercial view. I hope you understand some of that, okay?
Thank you, Harald. I was also tailing on this previous question regarding the materials that have been offered to you for selection, being selecting the producers and what is going to be involved in an album. Although we know about a couple of songs that have been played also on gigs that in particular did not make it to an album, is there also in the future plans for including those left out materials or songs maybe in a later collection?
Both yes and no. I mean, there's, I guess, you know, by the time we get to about 2025, maybe we're around to the deluxe edition of Foot to the Mountain. But of course, also, there's a reason why some of those songs didn't make it. You know, also people may feel strongly against them, that they don't want you to hear them. They don't want to play that version of the song. So I guess that's always a little bit of a conflict, because, you know, some of the collectors and some of the fans wants to hear everything. But on the other hand, you know, if the artist is not satisfied, so maybe it doesn't feel right to them to release it. But once again, going back to the other question about the business changing, I think also that probably artists have to live with that with a bigger view because of YouTube and because of all the sharing, because you get used to people hearing, you may not always be happy with the show either. You could be, sang that song really badly, or somebody made a mistake, or sound was bad or so. But it's not our choice anymore. It's all out there. And the upside of that is that I think you get used to it, that it's not so precious. Needless to say, when we do a show, and if Morten does a show, or if Mags does something with Apparatchik or whatever, they would always want it to be, the very best they can possibly do. But things happen. Life's not perfect, music's not perfect, and it shouldn't be perfect. It's okay. It's okay that some things not always the same, that you make mistakes. But you don't. If you compare it to your whatever it is you do for a living or something, you don't necessarily want people to see your notes. If you work on a project, then you say, oh, that was past. Now it's really good. Now it turned good. So if somebody was, can I see all your notes? Can I see all the work you did up until then? You may say no. So we'll see. Some of it probably will be published, I'm sure. And we also did, there was also something else that is a new technical thing. Not new, but that didn't, for example, happen in the 80s, is people sharing the stems of the songs. If you know what stems are, they are musical parts, like Paul did with Man-Made Lake, and people made remixes. We have some plans to do that, actually, with some AHA material next year, which could be cool. Then you can make your own mix, and you make it sound good.
Hi, Nicola from the UK again. My question follows on, just here, it's me again. My question follows on from some of the comments you've just made, and it's really for Harald and for Terry. You're both clearly very big fans of AHA as well, whilst obviously... but obviously, as their managers, you have a professional role to fulfil, and I'm interested to know how easy or difficult it is for you to separate out the fan from the manager, and how you then make your decisions based on what's best for the band, whilst trying to, I guess, suppress the inner fan, maybe?
You can argue a lot. I think, I think the whole gist of that is really... Well, it goes back to certainly things I've been mentioning earlier. You have to be divorced from everything but the music. You just have to care about the song and the music. You've got to be totally honest to yourself, totally honest to the group, totally honest to the record company. Not always the most favourable thing to say, but you have to be honest. And if the guys come to you with a song they've written, they think it's great. In my case, I have to say, well, okay, I don't agree with it. Then they might do something else they hated, and I say, well, I think that's a hit, we'll go with that. And groups are usually indecisive, so they go, in the end they would listen, I suppose, I don't know. But it's very difficult, I suppose, I don't know. But we all face that, managers face that, and it's not easy. But usually, common sense prevails and we get where we're intending to go. And that's Harald now.
Thank you. But it's an interesting question, because obviously I was a huge AHA fan back in the day when I had never met them. I remember exactly where I was when I knew that Take On Me was #1 in America. I remember that exact moment, and I was just looking at the front page of VG, and it was just a big one with stars and stripes on it. It was so great. So it was weird, it was weird starting to work with Paul, who's I think is clearly, in my view, one of the best songwriters in the world. So I guess you have to separate in a way, but also on the other hand, I don't really do that. But you get used to it. It's strange, but they were clearly, as you probably know, because you all know so much AHA history and know so much about Norway. What they did was truly exceptional also not only as a musician, but also from a Norwegian point of view. Nobody had really done it, and really, quite frankly, nobody has really done it since either, not to the extent, by far, that they have done. So, I mean, they were my heroes, and also, but I was always interested as much in the business side of things as in the music. I was interested in both, and I still am. And of course, Terry Slater was my big hero. So it's great for me to sit here, you know, together with him. Big applause for Terry.
Hello, I've got a question to both the managers. How much did you push the artist, for example, to meet some deadlines or to bring up new material, or were they really overwhelmingly delivering stuff? Or can you somehow differentiate how did it work with you?
I haven't bought a gun yet, but yeah, I would have put a gun to their head at some times. But that's, deadlines are, and I don't think it's coincidental that the title of a-ha's first greatest hits is Headlines and Deadlines. I guess that says it all, really. Yeah, I think, you know, it's always, you know, it's always the fight for the deadlines. It's, but I've learned some new tricks, so I usually keep them now.
Bonjour, Alexandra from France. It's not really a question, but maybe do you have a word for fans who's coming all around the world to see Haha and to see Morten and actually to see you today? Do you have a word for us, all the fans, to share with us today?
Do you have a word to share?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what you mean.
A message, something just for us.
Oh, well, that's hard. I mean, of course, thank you all for coming. And I guess we should, you know, we really appreciate you coming, and I think we should have a lot of fun with numbers over the next year. There'll be a lot more numbers, a lot of things to guess, so keep on guessing.
All right, everybody, I think we need another round of applause for Harald. You guys are already thinking about taking second jobs to pay for all those new releases. Yeah? Okay, I'm saving my money. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is Tini, who is here. I already asked you guys how many of you were here last night for Morten's concert, which means quite a lot of you saw Tini perform as well.